Welcome back to Myths and Misadventures. My name is Cairo, and I am your storyteller. And in this series, I share a story about gods, heroes, and monsters from Greek mythology. And today, we're going to talk about Bellerophon and Pegasus. Today's version of the story comes from a children's treasury of mythology, whose cover actually features Bellerophon and the flying horse Pegasus, which is illustrated by Margaret Evans Price. More information about this particular book is in the description of this video. Without further ado, let's get mythical. Pegasus and Bellerophon. Pegasus was a wonderful winged horse, which belonged to Athena, the gray-eyed goddess who watched over heroes, and gave wisdom and skill to all those who truly wished it. Now it happened that after Athena had caught and tamed Pegasus, the winged horse, she did not care to ride him herself, but knew no mortal who deserved to own him. So, Athena gave Pegasus to the nymphs to care for until she could find a youth brave enough and wise enough to ride him. The nymphs were happy caring for Pegasus. They brushed him, combed his mane, and fed him, but they knew that, by and by, he would belong to a mortal master who would come and ride him away. At last in Corinth, there was born a little prince named Bellerophon. Glaucus, his father, had more skill in handling horses than any other man. As Bellerophon grew up, his father trained him and taught him all he knew, so that while Bellerophon was still very young, he understood the ways of horses and learned to ride them. All this time, the winged horse was without a master. When Bellerophon was 16, he began to long for travel and adventure in other lands, so he set out to visit a neighboring king. Many friends came to bid the gallant young man goodbye and wish him well, but there was one named Protus who pretended to be Bellerophon's friend, but who really wished for him the worst that might happen. Protus was jealous of Prince Bellerophon and hoped the young hero might not return from the journey. It happened that Protus was the son-in-law of Iobates, king of Lycia, and so, pretending friendship, Protus gave Bellerophon a letter to carry to the king. Bellerophon, knowing nothing of the wicked words that were in this letter, put it carefully in the pocket of his tunic and rode gaily away. When he reached Lycia, the home of Iobates, he found great sorrow in the land, and all the people mourning. Each night, a monster called the Chimera came down the valley and carried off women and children, sheep and oxen. The mountain where he lived was white with the bones of his victims. Bellerophon rode through the mourning city and came to the palace of the king. He presented himself to Iobates and gave him the letter. As the king read, his face darkened, and he seemed troubled, for the letter asked that Bellerophon should be put to death. The king did not like to heed the request in this strange letter, yet he wished to please his son-in-law. He knew that to kill a guest would be a wicked deed and against the laws of kindness to a visitor, and might also bring war on him from the land where the young prince lived. So, he decided to send Bellerophon to slay the Chimera, thinking he would never come back alive. Bellerophon was not the least bit afraid, because he longed for adventure and his heart was filled with a great desire to overcome the dark and evil monster, free the kingdom from fear, and make the mourning people happy. But before starting out, he found the oldest and wisest man in the whole kingdom and asked for his advice. This aged man was named Polydus. When he saw that Bellerophon was young and full of courage, yet humble enough to ask the help of one older, Polydus told him a secret which no one else in the kingdom knew. He told him of Athena's winged horse, which he had once seen drinking at a spring deep in the forest. "If you sleep all night in Athena's temple," said the old man, "and offer gifts at her altar, she may help you find the horse." Bellerophon went to the temple, and as he slept, he dreamed that he saw Athena. Clad in silver armor, her gray eyes shining as if they held sparks of fire. Plumes of blue and rose and violet floated from her helmet. She carried a golden bridle in her hand and told Bellerophon how he might reach the well where Pegasus came to drink. When Bellerophon awakened, he saw the golden bridle on the temple floor beside him, and knew Athena really had visited him. Then, with the bridle over his arm, he set out on his journey through the forest. When he found the well, he hid himself among the bushes nearby to watch for the coming of the winged horse. At length, Bellerophon saw the winged horse flying far up in the sky. Nearer and nearer he wheeled until his silver feet touched the green grass beside the spring. As Pegasus bent his head to drink, Bellerophon sprang from his hiding place and caught him by the mane. Before Pegasus knew what had happened, the golden bridle was slipped over his head, and Bellerophon had leaped to his back and was sitting between his outstretched wings. Pegasus rose into the air and darted wildly through the sky, now flying high among the clouds, now diving swiftly towards the earth. He reared and plunged, trying to shake Bellerophon from his back. He flew wildly over the sea and the mountains, all the way to Africa and back. He flew over Thebes and over Corinth, and people looking up in the sky thought they saw some strange bird passing overhead. But Bellerophon understood how to handle fierce horses, for he remembered the things his father had taught him. At last Pegasus knew he had found his master and, tired and panting, sank down in the grass beside the well. After Pegasus had rested, Bellerophon armed himself with a long spear and rode toward the mountain where dwelt the Chimera. There, on a ledge of rock outside his cave, the monster lay basking in the sunlight. He was partly like a lion and partly like a dragon. He lay with a lion's head resting between his paws and a long green tail like that of a lizard curled around him. Bellerophon rode his horse as near as he dared to the ledge on which the dragon lay, and raised his spear to strike at the Chimera, but the great beast blew out clouds of smoke and fire, and Pegasus drew back in terror. As the monster drew in his breath for another puff, Bellerophon rode close to the ledge, and with one strong thrust sent his spear through the heart of the Chimera. When the young prince came back to the palace, riding the winged horse and carrying the head of the dreadful Chimera, there was wild rejoicing in Lycia. Everyone admired and praised Bellerophon, and crowded around the wonderful horse, amazed at his wings and his silver feet. The young daughter of King Iobates, who came out on the portico of the palace to see the hero and his horse, fell in love with Bellerophon the moment she saw the young warrior sitting so proudly between the white wings of Pegasus. King Iobates led her to Bellerophon and gave him to her for his bride. For a long time they were happy together. Bellerophon and Pegasus went on many adventures, and when Iobates died, Bellerophon became the king. At last one day, Bellerophon thought of a most daring adventure. He decided he would try to ride Pegasus to Mount Olympus and visit the gods. Athena appeared and warned him that the gods would be angry, but he mounted his horse and rode high into the clouds, urging Pegasus up toward the summit of Mount Olympus. Zeus looked down and, seeing the horse approaching, was angry to think that any mortal should dare approach the home of the gods. He caused a gadfly to light on Pegasus and sting his neck and his shoulders and his nose. Pegasus was so startled by this that at once he reared and wheeled among the clouds, leaping wildly in the air, and Bellerophon was thrown from his back and dropped down to earth. Athena, causing him to land where the ground was soft, spared his life. But as long as he lived, Bellerophon wandered, crippled and lonely, seeking all over the earth for his wonderful winged horse. But Pegasus never again returned to him. Thank you so much for joining us for our tale about the hero Bellerophon and the winged horse Pegasus. And here at the end, I wanted to speak briefly about various naming conventions for the gods and goddesses and heroes of Greek mythology. In the book that I read today, the actual text uses the Roman names for the gods, not the Greek ones, but I changed it for consistency on our channel. For example, Athena's name appears in this book as Minerva, and Zeus appears as Jupiter. These names are the Roman equivalents of the Greek gods, and then while there are some slight variations in the finer points of some of the stories, overall the equivalent is pretty consistent. And these Roman versions of these names are where we get many of the names of our planets. Ares in the Roman pantheon is known as Mars, which is where we get the name of the planet, much like Jupiter, and Aphrodite as Venus, and so on. So if you ever encounter Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Minerva, and so on in stories of mythology and think they sound somewhat familiar to a Greek god you know, it very well might be.